In 2004, a group of scrappy high schoolers from Las Vegas formed the band Panic at the Disco, fronted by Ryan Ross and Brendan Urie. In 2008, fans made a confused-looking Ryan and Brendan hold up signs confirming one of the fan base's biggest conspiracies and the subject of countless fanfiction stories, that the two were in a romantic relationship. So, how did we get here? These images spread like wildfire in the fan communities, sparking a continuing debate about consent and fan culture, specifically within Bandom. But what is Bandom? How did fanfiction become such a huge part of online emo spaces, and how has it impacted the artist-fan relationship? Why do we love it when band boys kiss? Let's get into it. So what even is Bandom? Basically, this term is used as an umbrella for any fanfiction revolving around alternative bands in the mid-2000s, specifically revolving around three core bands: My Chemical Romance, Panic at the Disco, and Fall Out Boy. The term for this genre is kind of a mashup of fandom and band slash, and it first started to gain popularity in early 2007 when a new wave of fans were getting into these bands, and so their fan communities started to grow and thrive. Because not only were a ton of people starting to write band slash about the members of these three bands, but there was also this like vibrant online fan community of friendships and drama and in-jokes, and Bandom kind of encapsulates this whole phenomenon. So for a quick refresher on the three core bands, there was famed Chicago pop-punk group Fall Out Boy, made up of Patrick Stump, Pete Wentz, Joe Troman, and Andy Hurley. New Jersey punk rock group My Chemical Romance, with Gerard Way, Frank Ayero, Ray Toro, Mikey Way, and Bob Breyer. And the Las Vegas group that's literally 10 million genres, Panic at the Disco. Brendan Urie, Ryan Ross, Brent Wilson, later replaced by John Walker, and Spencer Smith.
Hey, I'm Pete Wentz from My Chemical Romance, and I'm just kidding.
There was also a cast of side players, bands that usually had their own distinct fanfiction categories, but would sometimes just pop up as secondary characters in fanfictions about the core three, and they didn't really require much introduction because the reader's familiarity with them was kind of just assumed. These included bands like All Time Low, The Used, All American Rejects, Mindless Self-Indulgence, Cobra Starship, The Academy Is, The Cab, Gym Class Heroes, The Hush Sound, and Hey Monday. So why these bands? Like I mentioned before, Bandom tended to center around three main bands, because not only were their individual fan bases growing exponentially in the mid-2000s, but also they were all kind of linked to each other in some way, like whether it be through being on the same record label, Fueled by Ramen and Decadence were the big ones, or being on tour together, or sharing members with previous bands, etc. As established in like every video on scene culture, Pete Wentz is kind of the catalyst of early 2000s emo music culture, the eye of the alternative hurricane. And Bandom coined this phenomenon 6 degrees of Wentz, wherein every band in that scene could be somehow linked back to Pete Wentz with no more than 6 degrees of separation. So obviously there's lots of material, because these bands would hang out a lot, and then fans would be treated to new images and videos of their real life relationships growing and changing, and have like a Jimmy Neutron style brain blast for a new work of fan fiction. As the 2010s began, there was also a lot of fandom debate about if new artists could be included under the Bandom umbrella, most notably with a push for 21 Pilots, making the emo trinity an emo quartet. This was mostly due to lyrical content around mental health and general aesthetic appeal. But there were obviously Bandom purists who questioned their connection to the Pete Wentz canon and rejected their inclusion, as well as the inclusion of artists like Halsey, 5 Seconds of Summer, and Melanie Martinez. Bandom first emerged on LiveJournal around 2004 to 2006, especially picking up speed in 2005 after that year's Warped Tour. During this time period, christened the Summer of Like by Bandom members, a lot of core and adjacent bands were all out on the road together, cozying up and forming new relationships and spawning a lot of conspiracy theories. Most notably the relationship between Pete Wentz of Fall Out Boy and Mikey Way of My Chemical Romance. The Summer of Like, coined from the working title of the Fall Out Boy song Bang the Doldrums, fun fact, is used as a setting for a whole subgenre of Bandom fics, even those not centering Pete and Mikey. Another popular setting is Taste of Chaos, a tour featuring My Chemical Romance and The Used that is often used as a backdrop for Burt McCracken and Gerard Way fanfiction.
Me and Burt don't date. LOL. well.
So LiveJournal was a huge hub for this content, especially since fanfiction.net banned RPF, real person fiction, in 2002. And niche LiveJournal communities like Slashy Punk Boys, Slash at the Disco, My Chemical Slash, and Patrick X Peter were created specifically for fic about the core 3 and adjacent bands. There were even more exclusive moderated communities like Yeah Chemical and Damn You Wentz, where writers had to apply or even be friends with a mod just to be considered. The early waves of Bandom are often placed around 2006 to 2009, and then 2010 to 2013. During the first wave, Panic! At the Disco was arguably the most popular band in fic, but when the band split in 2009, fans were distraught and the number of fics decreased dramatically. Plus, Fall Out Boy's infamous indefinite hiatus took place in 2009, so general band content and thus inspiration for fics really took a dive at that point. But in 2010, My Chemical Romance released their album Danger Days, The True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys, a concept album that really gave fans a new fantasy world to play around in and spawned the second wave of Bandom.
Look alive, sunshine.
From then on, My Chemical Romance took the throne for the most popular band in fanfic until their breakup in 2013 led to the second decline in Bandom activity. Okay, so the majority of Bandom fics fall under the category of slash, fan work in which 2 or more characters of the same sex/gender are in a sexual or romantic situation with each other, usually male-male pairings. So here we go, let's dive into some top ships. We have Frank and Gerard of My Chemical Romance, aka Frerard. This is mostly originating from their stage gay antics, especially during Project Revolution in 2007. Definitely the most popular My Chemical Romance pairing. Then there's Patrick and Pete of Fall Out Boy, aka Peterick. This is the most popular Fall Out Boy pairing, not based off of anything in real life other than their close friendship and maybe the Thanks Pete incident.
Thanks for this mic stand for being really tall. Thanks, Pete.
Then we have Ryan and Brendan of Panic! At the Disco, aka Ryden. This was the infamous and most popular Panic! At the Disco ship before the band split in 2009, with a resurgence again in 2016 after the Death of a Bachelor album was released, believed to include many veiled references to Ryden. Also, there were a lot of conspiracies involving the lyrics to Northern Downpour, any lyrical reference to the moon or sun, gay, and close readings of some of Ryan's old LiveJournal posts where he talks about being in love. And here's some more real quick for you. Spencer and Brendan of Panic! At the Disco, Frank and Mikey of My Chemical Romance, Pete of Fall Out Boy and Mikey of My Chemical Romance, Gabe of Cobra Starship, and William of The Academy Is, aka Gabilliam. In terms of categories, there's also Gen, just stories that have no romantic or sexual content, maybe more based in reality. Het, which is heterosexual pairings, and then Fem Slash, which is the same as Slash, but it's female-female pairings. Also, side note, a lot of the subjects of Fem Slash are the wives and girlfriends of band members, which, we will get to this later. So what are some of the most popular fics? Well, first off, starting with a banger, we have Unholy Verse by prolific fic author Bexless. Unholy Verse was kind of the stuff of legends, like a religious, goth, horror, alternative universe, Frank Gerard love story told in multiple parts. It's honestly really fucking well written and funny, and Gerard is a priest in it, and its icon status means that it's still floating around rec lists to this day, and people are still currently making fan art of it in some corners of the internet. I mean, come on, you can't deny it's a classic when you get lines like, "They'll poison you against me. I won't listen. No matter what they say, no matter what." Frank shifted and rested his forehead against Gerard's. "You're the only thing that matters to me," he admitted. Next to lines like, "Guess you're allergic to Vatican fabric softener," Mikey said. There was also The Heart Rate of a Mouse, a multi-part Ryden saga in which Ryan Ross is a famous musician and Brendan is his gay roadie in the 1970s. Abbreviated to Throme, this work was so classic in the Panic! At the Disco canon that the author started selling print copies and was even in talks to turn it into a bona fide fiction series. Literally, fans have gotten tattoos and edited parts of Wikipedia pages with the plot and graffitied quotes at the Chelsea Hotel. Okay, so in an effort to paint a full picture of the Bandom world, it seems necessary to bring up the subgenre of infamous fics or shock fics. These are basically stories designed to disturb readers, or in some particularly cases, stories that were written completely seriously that just happened to be super fucked up, like organically, and then became part of Bandom lore forever, amen. An example of this is the knife fic. An all-time low vignette that was apparently written to be unironically sexy, but is even more terrifying than it sounds. Basically, in a fit of passion and bad judgment, Jack and Alex decide to have a sexy, sharp knife time. It is really bad, don't read it. But perhaps the most infamous of all the infamous, the baddie herself, is the Milk fic. A Panic at the Disco story for the ages. Milk goes in places. This shit was notorious. Like, it was posted in 2011 and the author originally took it down just because it was getting plagiarized so much, but even after that, people copied it and spread it around, changing the name sometimes to cater to different fandoms. So like Louis and Harry from One Direction got the Milk treatment, Dan and Phil got the Milk treatment. And then, in the wildest twist, the author put it back up in 2013 because Brendan Urie himself made a Vine referencing it.
My milk fic brings all the girls to the net, and they're like, it's making me wet. Damn right, it's making you wet. You spent all your time surfing on the net, girl. I'm just kidding, but I know about it.
So, yeah. Also, My Immortal is really not Bandom at all, but it kind of feels necessary just to bring this up in terms of a gold standard of bad fic. And famed MCR stan Ebony Darkness Dementia Ravenway really knew what was up. Hey girl. So, okay, here's where things get messy. And I'm not talking milk. Obviously, if you're out here writing like Harry Potter fanfic, you don't run the risk of Hermione actually running into it and having to deal with herself being projected into this narrative that she has no control over and is usually intensely sexual. But Bandom fics are a different beast and have often crossed over into the real world, intersecting with their real life subjects and impacting the fan-artist relationship. When it comes to RPF, real person fic, LiveJournal user GibsonFic put it best when they said that the fourth wall is more like a fringe curtain, as the popularity of Bandom made it basically impossible for the three core bands not to know about it. And there have been numerous incidences of band members reacting to fanfiction about themselves, whether it be in a positive or negative way. On one end of the spectrum, there's the artists who seem to welcome the Bandom community with open arms, either being touched that their fans are so creative and want to write fanfiction about them, or just generally thinking it's hilarious and milking the more over-the-top fics for all they're worth. For example, in 2007, Empires, the more recent band of the Academia's member Tom Conrad, posted a quote from an explicit Tom Conrad Bob Breyer fanfic on their MySpace and allegedly commented, "Just beautiful." All Time Low mentioned it on stage in 2008.
So yeah, if you know the person or you are the person who's writing those graphic novels about us, please keep them coming. Start publishing them. I want that shit in stores on shelves because I think it would sell.
And Alex Suarez of Cobra Starship said in a 2007 interview that the band used to pretty regularly read fanfic together for laughs.
Yeah, we usually sit down and read it together as we have like hot chocolate in the morning, you know. There's some really crazy ones that are like where people like create scenarios of like their favorite dudes and bands. And it's like, I stole Ryan Ross from Pete Wentz. I thought that was pretty funny. I was flattered that they thought of me. Like, maybe I would steal Ryan Ross from Pete Wentz, you know, why not? So, I thought that was pretty sweet. Just because I was more so excited that they're like, yeah, let's throw Alex Suarez in the mix.
The rest of the Cobra Starship gang has also been pretty pro-fic. Like, Vicky T has commented her support on an explicit femme slash with her and Greta from the Hush Sound, and Gabe Saporta has captioned photos Gabilliam. A lot of bands have also adopted a middle-of-the-road, don't ask, don't tell kind of policy with fanfiction, not fully condemning it, but also wanting to keep a safe distance, keeping the fourth wall very much intact. As one of the most popular subjects of slash fic by far, My Chemical Romance has remained pretty staunchly in the as long as I don't have to see it camp, lauding fans' creativity, but also being low-key super grossed out by certain pairings.
You've probably been asked this already, but it's extended to fan fiction. Have you guys read any of this stuff?
I've heard about it. I tend not to read it. I don't know. You know, I think that one, I would be creeped out by reading like myself as a character in something, and then I would probably creep out the kids that write it because they don't want me to read it.
Someone sent me a link to one. It was about me and my brother. I got a paragraph in, read something, X'd out the box, and that's the end of me reading fanfic.
I mean, it's cool that you know, kids are, you know, being creative. You know, and kind of exploring their, you know, their creativity. So stop making us have sex with each other in your fanfiction.
Gerard Way has said, "I'm at peace with fanfiction that is not offensive, stressing the fictional aspect. Also, after he innocently changed his Twitter avatar to a picture of a milk carton in 2016, the poor guy was somehow directed to the infamous milk fic by fans and shot off some more thoughts about his relationship to the art form. My point is, I'm okay with fandoms. I spent a lot of years being upset about fics and ships, and there's no point to it. I learned to laugh at it. And I understand why it exists. People that are fans of something don't want to be told how to enjoy something. And as long as you remain respectful to these people in person and online, express yourself. Enjoy how you enjoy. Patrick Stumba Fallout Boy has also expressed his desire to keep a safe distance from the fanfiction world, replying to fan tweets about fic in a jokey but stern way that it's bad etiquette to ask me about fanfic, and that the only questions he won't answer are about Peterick or SpongeBob, and I ship me and the hatred of the concept of shipping. We'll call it the hatred of shipwreck. Brendan Urie of Panic at the Disco has expressed his mild disgust and annoyance at the whole thing, especially the Ryden pairing that he got asked about all the time, intensifying once he became more accessible to fans via his popularity on Vine.
Do I know what the milk fic is? Yeah. It's a terribly sad, disgusting story.
But Ryan was not real. Sorry to kill your fantasies. You fucking losers. You know what? But that's why it's called fanfic, because it's fiction, so just keep it up. Oh, yeah. Doesn't matter. There's this one called the milk fic that is just the most, only a complete psycho would come up with this stuff, because it's so disgusting.
And like Ryan Ross is also barraged with questions about Ryden all the time on social media, but he's mostly gone offline, so good for him. Also, remember that one fic, The Heart Rate of a Mouse? Brendan and Ryan get that one thrown at them so often in online fan spaces that the author of the fic, Anna Green, actually had to make a public statement urging fans to maintain the fourth wall. Fanfic is for fans. Fan content is for fans. It's not for showrunners or canon authors or any real people who are fictionalized for a story. Throwing fanfic into the faces of any of these people is rude and inconsiderate. Look into the long list of instances where actors have been shown compromising fan art. Look into fanfic being read to actors at Comic Cons, where people then laugh and mock fandom expressions of creativity. Realize how this is used to humiliate and belittle people who engage in fandoms, and especially female-dominated fandom spaces. And like I said before, Bandom is such a huge, uncontrollable entity in these fan spaces that it's basically impossible for members of these bands not to know of its existence. So it can be almost assumed that those band members who haven't said anything about it publicly have kind of made their silence a statement in itself. A passive disapproval that kind of says they don't want anything to do with it. So the real question is real person fic ethical? It's complicated. There's a whole debate over like, where's the line between a real person and the fictional characterization that an author has written for them. Many have come to the consensus that fic characters are merely meant to represent the public persona of these people, not the whole ass real people themselves. You know, it's all about what we write onto them based on our outside observation. Especially when it's like an MCR fic set in a fictional world that they created on top of that. So it's like if you were to write a fan fiction about Jetstar and Party Poison getting it on in the world of the Danger Days album, you know, like that is so far removed from Frank and Gerard as people in everyday life. On the Be the Serpent podcast, host Freya said, "It's about a certain facet of whatever that person's facade that they present to the world. Snagging on something that people find narratively interesting and wanting to tell stories about it." So how could real person fic and Bandom potentially be beneficial to both artist and fan? Well, first of all, it fosters creativity and it creates a space that allows fans to build off of the worlds that have been created already by the catalogs of these bands. As we know, a lot of massive authors started out as fanfic writers. Stephanie Myers. And having this place of passion to use as a jumping off point can be extremely helpful for writers. Not to mention having a whole built-in community of writers and readers to bounce your ideas off of. It also just strengthens the fan base at large, creating these massive online fan groups and giving fans a place to connect with one another over the music that means the most to them in the entire world. And also, in those cases where artists do interact positively with the fan works, it can really strengthen the bond between artist and fan, creating a lot of silliness and mutual appreciation that's just like really special. So okay, let's look at some arguments against real person fic. Number one is that it can be just like straight up invasive and make its subjects really uncomfortable. It sometimes involves not only the band members, but their wives, girlfriends, family members, children. This is another controversial topic because, for example, a lot of people include Lindsay Way in their fanfictions because she's married to Gerard in real life. But she also incidentally is a public figure herself because she's in the band Mindless Self-Indulgence, so it feels a little bit less ethically iffy. But then there are the cases where people include wives and girlfriends who just never consented to be in the public spotlight, and now they're being put into this sexual situation in a story, and it just feels bad. In situations where the artist isn't comfortable, it can really decay the relationship between artist and fan, leading the artist to either resent their fans a little bit or cut off communication completely, severing any potential openness that could have existed between the two, either online or in person. But okay, here are my thoughts on the fourth wall. I feel like let artists break the fourth wall on their own terms instead of like potentially shoving fan fiction at them when they're just minding their own business trying to interact with their fan base. It's like kind of fun and wholesome when people like Alex Suarez find fan fiction and they're really honored by it and they're astounded by fans' creativity. But I feel like definitely let them come to you. We as a community basically lost our connection to Gerard Way because there seemed to be a lack of boundaries concerning fan fiction. Like, he is off living his life in peace, and I for one am so happy for him. But it definitely does suck that he stopped feeling safe in online fan communities. I say keep that fourth wall up, baby. Like, reinforce that thing with steel and plastic CD cases because God knows there's no fucking way to play a physical CD these days. So where is Bandom now? The recent era of Bandom mostly exists on Tumblr, which allows new waves of the fan base to grow and socially interact with each other in addition to posting fanfics. My Chemical Romance's reunion announcement in 2019 really got old and new fans alike flocking back to online fan communities. And right now the My Chemical Romance Tumblr world is less about real person fic, other than Unholy Verse, which is law, and more about deep analysis of their music and its relationship to gender and society and politics, etc. The Panic at the Disco circles have also started leaning more anti-real person fic, with popular blog Pretty Odd Fever debunking Ryden theories alongside their like obscure band content. And interestingly enough, there's also somewhat of a Bandom 2.0 popping up around newer bands like Waterparks and Palais Royale. These bands grew up with more of an understanding of online communities and thus have been able to embrace them more seamlessly. Like, Austin Knight literally has a podcast where he reads submitted real person fic of Waterparks.
Our first date was a picnic at the park. Aww. I know! I was finally going to take the next step with Austin Knight. I feel very weird.
It's wild and kind of amazing. Whew. Alright, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. That's basically all I have on the wild world of Bandom. I know it's a huge topic to cover in a relatively short amount of time, so apologies if I missed any big points, but it was extremely fun to dive back into the subculture that meant so much to me back in the day. Also, shout out to fanlore.org for being a huge resource in researching this video. Genuinely could not have done it without you guys. If you're enjoying my content so far, it would mean the world to me if you would like, subscribe, or comment. It helps me so much as a smaller creator. Thank you so much for watching. I have been Nina. Mwah. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.